was seen as a old curmudgeon who was basically very unpopular, so unpopular that he had to do something unceremonious. He had to do something unique. He had to drop out of the race and, be swapped out for his vice president. All of that aside, Kamala Harris still had the fundamentals. I kept maintaining the position that if she builds upon the momentum and actually has a bold policy agenda, talking and communicating how she's going to be different than the existing administration, that she would have a tremendous time in the polls. She would have a much better standing in the polls, that people would be openly, defending her. Some of the issues was immigration. Another issue was on the economy front. I think that her policies were definitely, there was some good there, but there was a lot that was just lackluster. And the tacking to the center, tacking to the right, and the consistent hugging and kissing Republicans, all of that, in my opinion, was bad campaigning for the most part. But as I said, time and time again throughout this process, the liberals who would come at me and say, Hassan, you just don't want Kamala Harris to win because of Gaza, blah, blah, blah. I kept repeating, that's not the only issue I have with the campaign, although that is definitely an issue I have with the campaign, that she would still most likely win. Now, the last month or so was a little bit different because I think that Kamala Harris became more prominent in the last month, a lot more media opportunities. She put herself out there and she started pumping hundreds or tens of millions of dollars worth of ads with the campaign messages that they had aligned. And in that process, it seemingly backfired on the Harris camp, and instead, Republicans started gaining more momentum. Republicans started gaining momentum in down ballot races, but more importantly, Donald Trump started gaining momentum. I still, however, maintain the position until this day, and I still maintain this position that Kamala Harris will most likely win the election come tomorrow. And this is not just me looking at the polls, even though, of course, I have looked at the polls this entire time, but also looking at the vibes. I don't just do poll analysis, I do polls plus vibes. Why do I do this? Well, the reason why I do polls plus vibes is because polls alone are not going to be enough. I have, however, learned something that's a little bit scary today, this morning. I've told you guys already, I have like a bunch of people that I talk to, normies in general. I have some high propensity voters, mid propensity voters, and low propensity voters in a place like California. And I look to who they vote for and how they vote as well, because I just want to kind of see like, a focus group basically. And my low propensity voter did vote for Donald Trump, which was shocking. And I don't know if it's because I basically kept asking him over and over again if he was going to go out and vote or not. But my low propensity conspiracy theory guy who loves RFK did actually end up voting. And that kind of shocked me a little bit. That kind of worried me a little bit because this is California. It doesn't mean California's going to flip, obviously. But what it means is even in a place where someone who is not likely to go out and vote at all, where his vote is not even going to matter at all, he found time out of his day to go out and vote, even though he has never gone out and voted before. That to me is a little troublesome. I haven't really seen this anywhere else in the data, but that still scares me regardless. Having said that, however, I think that the fundamentals are on Kamala Harris's side still. Now that I've talked about the Kamala Harris side of things and what I consider to be like not great campaigning, for example, I think that she focused far too much on trying to win over the white suburban mothers, and you can win them over. No one is saying don't try to win them over, but the way to win them over is supposed to be a delicate balance where you're not hemorrhaging your base of support, because you cannot let the urban pop fall apart. You cannot let the urban population, black voters, brown voters, young voters in general, voters in college, students and the like, not come out and vote for you because they are just like too bored and too grossed out by or too depressed to go out and vote because they just constantly hear you hugging and kissing the likes of Liz Cheney or saying you're going to have a Republican in your cabinet. It's not good. It is not good. She needs white women. I understand that. I'm not against that, but there's a way to do that while simultaneously still communicating objectively popular policies to the low and mid propensity voters on the Democratic Party side, but they haven't done that at all. They've hyper-focused on high propensity voters in general. They're banking on a low turnout election. That's not good. Other aspects of the campaign that I took issue with, the fact that her addressing the economic harm that people were experiencing, even though she was given a massive gift, where voters did not actually hold her responsible for the problems of the Biden administration and its impact on the economy and the inflation and the negative real wage growth that they experienced under Biden for a brief moment. That kind of stuff is unforgettable for a lot of voters, but they actually originally did not say Kamala Harris was responsible for that. Now, that's good. That's a massive gift for Kamala Harris. What did she do with that gift? Not much. The price gouging stuff was great. Fantastic messaging, fantastic policy, fully on board with that, right? But they didn't go forward with that too aggressively. And instead, they kind of backpocketed that. And I personally consider that a flub. I was expecting a 2008 Obama style run, but instead, we basically got a 2012 Obama run. And that's not good. Or worse, dare I say, a 2020 Joe Biden run. Actually worse than that because it was more conservative than 2020. Anyway, there's some good policies there like combating price gouging. Fantastic. Okay. Good defenses there saying that Donald Trump's tariffs, which is the only economic policy that he's put forward, is actually a mass sales tax. Fantastic. Expert. Those are both great. Expanding Medicaid to at-home care. Fantastic. It's not enough. It's actually very marginal. And it's very frustrating that that's the only thing that the Democrats are pushing for. You should at least expand it down to 55. Like you should lower the age. You should lower the age eligibility for Medicare to 55. That is literally the entry. That is like that's stepping in. Dental and vision as well. That's also important. They didn't really push that too much, but they realized that was actually popular messaging. So that definitely helped out. So on that front, that's great. Obviously, no separation from Biden on Gaza is a massive flub. That was a huge gimme. Donald Trump was beating Biden by like 30 points on the issue of Israel-Palestine. Donald Trump is now beating Kamala by the same percentage points on Israel-Palestine. And that's not a good idea. But having said all of that, why do I still think Kamala Harris is going to win? Because a lot of people will say, Hassan, you've said this already. You've ripped into Kamala Harris left and right. It's because you hate a black woman. You don't want her to succeed. Is that the reason? No. These are very real considerations. These are very real criticisms that I think are perfectly valid. I have time and time again showcased evidence, empirical evidence, messaging polls and whatnot to prove to you that what I'm saying is correct. And you can also go and watch those older videos as well. Now, I will, however, turn around and explain something very important to you. The person that was running an even worse campaign with also worse metrics overall, with a worse ceiling overall, was Donald Trump. That's it. While Kamala Harris made, in my opinion, a lot of communication mistakes, none were as bad as the routine garbanzo that you saw from Donald Trump throughout this entire process. Donald Trump's negatives are that he's too narcissistic and too chaotic and says a whole bunch of unhinged things. So much so that people who are in support of Donald Trump's ideology and ideals sometimes find themselves at odds with Donald Trump. Not to the same degree as like the MSNBC Never Trump Republicans, but certainly enough that they're like, I don't know if I'm going to go out and vote. Or in the finite amount of time that you have to make a convincing argument to not only have people be your supporters, but also go out and vote for you, Donald Trump fucked up big time. Nonstop, as a matter of fact. He had strong issues where he could have talked specifically about the economy, but there was no good policy on that front. He just kept saying, remember how good things were when I was president, trying to hold on to the nostalgia factor and the reality that Americans have short-term memory. He just kept saying, remember how good shit was when I was president. But even then, he didn't even hit that point hard enough because he was entirely too predisposed with the anti-immigrant screeds. His economic policy was tariffs, which is a really stupid idea that absolutely zero people agree with, especially because Donald Trump never communicated what he was going to put tariffs on. He just said across the board on all goods, specifically coming from China, which again is idiotic because it would destroy his number one industry of his supporters, Trump merchandise, right? That was a huge issue. And also, like I said, Kamala Harris's campaign did good counter messaging on that issue. So they are capable of doing that when they want to do it by effectively showing everyone that tariffs are just a mass sales tax and that China's not paying for it. It's actually American companies that are purchasing the Chinese manufactured goods that are paying for the tariff, and that cost will be offset. That will transfer over to the consumers. That was a mess.